Hi, I'm Muhammad Ahmad Hamdan and you're watching Nightline. The top stories. Government will bring job scam victims home safely, assures PM. And trip back from hometowns is travelling to work, even on day off, rules appeals court. Good morning. Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob has given his assurance that Malaysian victims of job scam syndicates abroad will be rescued. He said that the government was committed to assist and resolve issues affecting Malaysians stranded abroad due to job scams, as raised by the Malaysian Community Crime Care (MCCC) and the Malaysian International Humanitarian Organisation (MHO). In a statement on Tuesday, Dato Sri Ismail Sabri stressed that the government was extremely concerned and viewed seriously the fate of Malaysians who were stranded in several countries such as Laos, Myanmar, Thailand and Cambodia. He also advised the public to be careful of job offers in other countries, adding that they should verify it through the Foreign Ministry to avoid them from being scammed by these syndicates. Dato Sri Ismail Sabri had earlier attended a meeting with Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Special Functions, Dato Dr. Abdul Latif Ahmad, MCCC President Tan Sri Musa Hassan, MHO Secretary General Dato Hishamuddin Hashim, as well as families of victims. It was reported that a group of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, sent a memorandum to the Prime Minister to request the government's assistance and intervention in resolving the job scam issue. Meanwhile, Dr. Abdul Latif said the proposed setting up of a special committee at the ASEAN level will be among the approaches to be discussed by the Cabinet at its meeting on Wednesday to resolve the issue of Malaysians falling victims to job scams abroad. He also said that this issue required the cooperation of all parties.
Perkara ini telah mula dapat laporan daripada ahli-ahli keluarga. Setengah mereka pergi lapor kepada polis, setengah pada mereka melaporkan isu-isu mereka ni kepada NGO. Jadi saya kuat berpendapat perkara ini akan dapat diselesaikan secara lebih holistik pada esok hari lah, bila dibentangkan kepada Jemaah Menteri.
Dr. Abdul Latif said this at a press conference after a meeting with the families of job scam victims and several NGO representatives in Putrajaya on Tuesday. According to Wisma Putra, 158 cases have been reported as of Monday, and of the total, 43 victims in Cambodia have been rescued. The Court of Appeal has ruled that a worker who is travelling from his or her hometown to the workplace in another town is eligible for Social Security Organisation SOCSO claims, as it is considered travelling to work. The landmark decision was made on Monday by the Appellate Court, which ruled that the injury suffered by N. Satyasilan in an accident 6 years ago, even though it occurred on his day off, were considered an employment injury under Section 24(1)(a) of the SOCSO Act. The unanimous decision was made by a three-member panel of judges comprising Justices Datuk Lee Swee Seng, Datuk Wazir Alam Maidin Mira and Datuk Muhammad Nazlan Muhammad Ghazali, who held that the SOCSO Act should be interpreted expansively and liberally in the context of corporate social responsibility, allowing employees to travel to their workplace on weekends from their hometowns. Satyasilan, who was working as a senior technician at Infineon Technology Sanjang Berhad in Kulim, Kedah, met with an accident while returning to his workplace on October 16, 2016, after spending the weekend at his home in Ipoh. Before taking this case to the Court of Appeals, he had filed an appeal to the High Court in Ipoh, but this was dismissed. Prior to this, Satyasilan applied for temporary disability claims from SOCSO but was rejected based on the reason that the injury sustained in his accident did not qualify as an employment injury under the Act. His appeal was also rejected by the SOCSO board, which asserted that the claims were invalid since he was travelling on his day off. In other news, Human Resources Minister Datuk Seri M. Saravanan on Tuesday proposed for a social safety net to be established via the Social Security Organisation SOCSO for private sector workers after they turn 60. He said the social safety net for private sector workers could be done by switching the existing contribution scheme to a pension-like scheme. Datuk Seri Saravanan pointed out, unlike those in the public sector who are protected by the government's pension scheme, private sector workers have no social safety net after their retirement, except for their contributions to the Employees Provident Fund, EPF, which they can withdraw at the age of 55 and 60. Due to this, his ministry was currently doing an in-depth study on the matter and looking at the possibility of increasing the contribution for SOCSO to become a pension-like scheme after private sector workers turn 60. Datuk Seri Saravanan also stressed that this move was not an option and must be taken as the country will become an ageing nation by 2040. He also noted that one of the challenges of transforming the existing contribution scheme into a pension-like scheme was that more monthly contributions will be needed. He added that it would take around 6 months for him to come up with a new concept of the contribution scheme. The last time the rate for monthly contributions was raised was in 1971. Budget 2023, which will be presented in Parliament on October 7th, will continue to focus on strengthening the momentum of the country's economic recovery and generating sustainable growth in the long term. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Economy, Datuk Seri Mustafa Mohamad, said the Malaysian economy is on solid ground, backed by resilient economic foundations, pragmatic policies and diversified economic structures. However, he noted that the management of the country's economy in 2022 is expected to be more challenging. He also set the World Economic Growth Forecast in 2022 and 2023 by international organizations such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, have been revised downward. The IMF has revised its global economic growth forecast to 3.2% for 2022 in July from 3.6% in April and 4.4% in January 2022. While for 2023, the World Economic Growth Forecast has been lowered from 3.8% in January 2022 to 2.9% in July 2022. Despite this, Datuk Seri Mustafa emphasised that the measures taken by the government in implementing stimulus packages and the gradual reopening of the economy have reduced the major impact of the COVID-19 crisis and also supported the economic recovery.
Pentas persahabatan antarabangsa kembali. Empat negara beraksi demi satu misi. Piala Raja Tai ke-48 hanya di TV9. Juga di saluran MyFree TV 109 dan Astro 149.
Now, Petronas is increasing 2 categories of allowances for students under its sponsorship, involving 2,267 individuals with immediate effect. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the increase in these 2 allowances took into account the rising cost of living, and he hoped that the assistance will ease the burden on students and their parents, as well as further facilitate the students' learning process. According to the Prime Minister, the first category involved an increase in the allowance for books and study materials from 1,000 to 1,500 ringgit for students in Malaysia and an additional 500 ringgit for students abroad, while the second category involves students under the Petronas Education Sponsorship Program, PESP, where the onboarding allowance would be increased from 4,500 to 5,000 ringgit.
Tajan ini diharap dapat mendorong anda semua mengorak langkah lebih jauh untuk menggapai cita-cita dan peluang dengan kejayaan serta seterusnya menabur bakti kepada industri dan negara tercinta ini. Selamat maju jaya untuk semua pelajar.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said this at the 2022 PESP Award Presentation Ceremony at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre on Tuesday. He added that the PESP program had produced professional and skilled workforce among the young generation, especially to achieve the target of a high-income developed nation as stipulated in the 12th Malaysia Plan. Therefore, he reminded the PESP recipients not to waste the opportunity given by excelling in their studies and then return to serve the country. This year, a total of 600 students, which is the highest so far, were offered to study under the PESP program, involving sponsorship amounting to over 340 million ringgit. Malaysia must adjust the mechanisms of its economic growth trajectory to ensure that it respects the natural limitations that are imposed by planetary boundaries. Sultan of Perak, Sultan Nazrin Shah, said rather than reducing energy usage per se, the country needs to shift away from unsustainable and damaging fossil fuels and move towards far greater use of renewable resources.
Economic growth thus can and must continue, but it must be decoupled from its current overuse of limited natural resources and over-reliance on fragile ecosystems.
Sultan Nazrin said this in his royal address at the Cooler Earth Sustainability Summit. He added that the transition to a better world must be made real and cannot just be chatter and lip service. As such, policies and incentives must be adapted to ensure that growth continues, but in a way that is sustainable and inclusive.
Is among many pointing out.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz said the transition to the green agenda needs to be done gradually. This, as rapid changes can potentially bring negative spillover effects, such as job losses.
Therefore, to mitigate the negative socio-economics of coal and hydrocarbons phase out, governments must implement just transition policies for affected populations. So there is a need to keep jobs in areas where coal production or hydrocarbons are concentrated.
Speaking at the Cooler Earth Sustainability Summit 2022 at a ministerial panel titled Accelerating Climate Change and Justice alongside his Indonesian counterpart Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul cited an International Labour Organization report which revealed that Southeast Asia could potentially lose around 500,000 jobs in fossil fuels by 2050, but could gain around 5 million jobs, mainly in the renewable energy sector.
Therefore, the plan to ban ICE by a certain year are harder for.
The investigation on the alleged theft of civil servants' data from the e-Penyata Gaji system is still being carried out by the National Cybersecurity Agency and teams from various other agencies. National Security Council Director General Datuk Rodzi Mat Saad said that a statement will be issued once authorities have completed their investigations.
Kita masih meneruskan siasatan, agensi-agensi yang berkaitan masih meneruskan siasatan dan kita akan pastikan suatu itu betul-betul sahih, perlu kita akan buat kenyataan. Dan tentulah agensi yang berkaitan bersama pasukan dari pelbagai agensi menyiasat trend, korelasi dan sebagainya, dan kita lihat dari mana puncanya dan kita akan mengambil tindakan yang sewajarnya.
He said this to reporters after officiating at the Malaysian ICT Security Officers Convention 2022 in Putrajaya on Tuesday. The media previously reported that a group of grey hat hackers claimed that they had hacked into the e-Penyata Gaji system to show that there are loopholes in the system. On September 18th, Communications and Multimedia Minister Tan Sri Anwar Musa said the government had found a lead regarding the alleged data theft and a statement will be issued soon. The federal government is committed to achieving comprehensive internet access throughout Sarawak by 2024. Communications and Multimedia Minister Tan Sri Anwar Musa said the target could be achieved through the implementation of Phase 2 of the National Digital Network Plan, or JENDELA, with over 600 villages in the state set to have internet access through satellite technology.
Dan saya tidak fikir rakyat harus menunggu begitu lama. Jadi kita telah membuat ketetapan di bawah program jendela 2, 1,400 kampung ini perlu disegerakan konektiviti dengan menggunakan teknologi satelit. Jadi teknologi satelit tak payah pasang fiber optik.
He said this at a media conference after the Peranti Siswa handing over ceremony in Kuching on Tuesday. Tan Sri Anwar explained that the 600 villages in Sarawak were among 1,400 nationwide that had been identified as areas with less than satisfactory internet access. He also said the federal government was willing to bear the high costs of providing internet access using satellite technology. He added that the estimated cost for Phase 2 of the Jendela program had yet to be ascertained, and its implementation was expected to begin in 2023. After the break, Kremlin denies mass burial discoveries in Izum. Don't go away. Restrictions and video addresses, the UN General Assembly is again asking leaders to come in person if they wish to speak, with the sole exception made for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The death of Queen Elizabeth II, however, disrupted the summit anew when US President Joe Biden, who by tradition should be the second speaker on the first day, will now instead speak on Wednesday. The first day will feature French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, the leaders of the two largest economies of the European Union, which has mobilized to impose tough sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, however, has been urging leaders not to forget other priorities, such as education, the topic of a special summit on Monday.
All of you here today and those...
In other news, the Kremlin on Monday denied its forces were responsible for large-scale killings in East Ukraine and accused Kyiv of fabricating its discoveries of mass graves in recaptured territory. In a statement, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Kyiv's claims were lies and Moscow will stand up for the truth in this story. In the latest incident spurring fears of an atomic emergency, Ukraine said Russian rockets landed dangerously close to a nuclear power station in southern Ukraine. Ukraine recaptured Izum and other towns in the east this month, crippling Kremlin supply routes and bringing fresh claims of Russian atrocities, with the discovery of hundreds of graves, some containing multiple bodies. A powerful earthquake struck western Mexico on Monday, leaving at least one person dead and sparking panic hundreds of kilometers away in Mexico City on the anniversary of two devastating tremors. The quake, magnitude 7.7, according to the National Seismological Agency, shook buildings and sent people rushing out into the streets of the capital. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said in a Twitter statement that one person was killed by falling debris in a shopping center in Manzanillo. According to seismologists, the epicenter was located near the Pacific coast, around 400 kilometers west of the capital. This was the third major earthquake on record to hit the Latin American country on the day of September 19th. Over in Japan, 2 people were confirmed dead, with 2 others said to have been found without vital signs after Typhoon Nanmadol passed through the Kyushu region as it continues through the west coast. According to government spokesman Hirozaku Matsuno, at least 114 people were injured, 14 of them seriously.
He added that the authorities were also searching for one person, reported to be missing. The storm toppled trees, smashed windows, and dumped a month's worth of rain in a 24-hour period on parts of the Miyazaki prefecture, where the 2 deaths were confirmed. Some 140,000 homes are still without power nationwide, as Japan is currently in its typhoon season, facing around 20 such storms a year. The storm was downgraded to an extratropical cyclone on Tuesday as it made its way off Japan's northeastern coast and headed into the Pacific Ocean.
Gabriel Julfadli strike diving gold for Sabah. Sports after this short break. Julfadli Jalib paired up for the first time and armed with only a day's training produced a stunning performance to clinch gold in the men's 3-meter springboard synchronized event at the 20th Malaysia Games, Sukma, on Tuesday. Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games silver medalists Gabriel and Julfadli beat the odds to capture the first gold medal offered in diving by collecting 317.37 points at the National Aquatic Centre in Bukit Jalil. Although they are from the same state, the 20-year-old Gabriel, being a national diver, trains in Bukit Jalil, while Julfadli trains with the state team at the Likan Sports Complex swimming pool in Kota Kinabalu. Federal Territories' Nur Qayyum Nazmi Muhammad Nazim Rong Yui Jie had to be contended with silver, while Sarawak's Elvis Presley Clement So Ze Kang took home bronze. In the men's platform synchronized event, Julfadli combined with Muhammad Anil Rian Nur Matrud Abdullah to take bronze with 291.78 points. Elvis Presley, Jared Aiden Harold captured gold with 334.44 points, while Nur Qayyum Nazmi Ruijie ended up second. Next, Spain trained at their base in Madrid on Tuesday ahead of games against Switzerland and Portugal in Nations League Group A2. Borja Iglesias and Nico Williams debuts for La Roja sometime in the next week, but Ansu Fati, Iago Aspas and Sergio Ramos were all left out of Luis Enrique's squad. Runners-up in last year's competition, Spain currently top Group 2A and sit 1 point clear of neighbours Portugal, with a visit next Tuesday after hosting Switzerland on Saturday. Still to come, man sentenced to 428 years in jail and 240 lashes for raping daughters and threatening wife. Stay with us.
Saya betul-betul rasa tercabar kali ni, Jess.
In Malacca, the Ayekuro Sessions Court on Tuesday sentenced a supervisor of an investment company to a total of 428 years imprisonment and 240 strokes of the rotan for committing sexual abuse against his 2 daughters and threatening to kill his wife. Judge Nariman Badarudin gave the punishment to the 56-year-old man after he pleaded guilty to 28 counts of committing rape, unnatural sexual acts and sexual assault against both victims. The accused, who has 2 wives, was charged under the Penal Code and the Sexual Offences Against Children Act with 21 counts of raping his daughters, as well as slapped with 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 count each for sexual connection by object and committing unnatural sex against the 2 victims, now aged 15 and 19. All the offences, which started when both victims turned 12, were committed at a house in Taman Tambici between September 24, 2015 and September 5th this year. However, the court ordered all the sentences to run concurrently from the date of his arrest on September 8th, so the man will serve only 45 years in jail and receive 24 lashes of the cane. In a separate proceeding, the magistrate's court sentenced the father of 5 to 2 years imprisonment for committing criminal intimidation against his 47-year-old wife. Magistrate Mazana Sinin gave the punishment after the accused also pleaded guilty to the charge under the Penal Code. And that wraps up this edition of Nightline. But before we leave, let's take a look at the exhibition based on the 2009 blockbuster Avatar, which will open at Shanghai Disney Resort this Thursday. The exhibition features life-size recreations of iconic landmarks from the film and also mysterious animals and plants of Pandora, such as heavy armored horses and mountain banshee. With that, I'm Muhammad Ahmad Hamdan. Thank you for watching and have a great week ahead.